Well, it's
All
wonderful to
right.
meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, I like to start our conversations with a question that I really wanted to get rid of, but it always seems to come back, and it's COVID. 5 years ago, and I know especially up in Minneapolis in that area, it was very intense. There was a lot going on, but that time period changed all of us in so many ways. How did you get through the pandemic, and how has it affected your work and what you do today?
That is a great question. So the pandemic for me was transformative for many, many reasons. I do have a full-time job in addition to my coaching that I do. And my full-time job, I'm a probation officer. And at that time, this was before I had started my business, we were able to work from home. So prior to COVID, I was over-exercising a lot and my schedule was kind of insane looking back on it. So when COVID happened, it was that forced slowing down.
Yeah.
Um, and that ability to kind of take a step back and see what I was doing to myself. And it was really, really helpful being able to work from home, having some of that time to myself. I have about a 45-minute hour commute to work as it is. So even just having some of my time back in the day. But ultimately, what helped me get through it was being able to slow down, take a step back, look at what I was doing, and really re-examine how I had been living my life so busy, and really focus on those things that were ultimately made me more happy or more important. So,
So let's get into the coaching, training, nutritional aspect of this.
mhm,
And I want to know exactly what you do on a daily basis. So I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day,
mhm.
and the kid in the back of the room is like, "What do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Well, in simple terms, I coach people through creating healthier habits that are more sustainable than maybe what they've done in the past. So that could be exercise routines, it could be helping with nutrition, answering any questions they have, or even kind of working on some of the thoughts that we have going through our heads that impact how we show up to ourselves for ourselves in the world.
So what did you want to be when you were 12 years old? What was your dream job?
When I was 12, you know, I've always been kind of criminal justice leaning. So at that time, I probably honestly wanted to be a police officer. And then that transformed into probation, which then transformed into coaching. Ultimately, it was always kind of a helping field that I wanted to be in.
So take me back to your roots. Where were you born and raised? What were the foundational elements or seeds that were planted that have made you want to help people to get them into a better place and to go after this career? What were kind of some of the things that led you down this path?
Oh, that is a great question. Um, I grew up in a pretty small town. Um, I am the youngest of three children. I don't know if there was any significant pivotal moment in my life growing up that made me say I want to help people. I think I was just always very interested in kind of working with people who maybe had a hard time at life, helping them improve and get better. But mainly what kind of changed, what shifted that was, I would say, in my early 20s after I left. I really was struggling with poor eating habits and over exercising, but ultimately what it boiled down to were my own limiting beliefs in just how my negative self-talk and kind of spending my entire 20s like reaching for something that I felt was not in grasp and not really living my truest self. So I don't know where that really started when I was, in my younger years. I'd always been really career driven and I'm still very career driven. It's just really changed. I think in my 20s, when it came to health and fitness, I always kind of had debilitating imposter syndrome. If I'm being honest, it kind
Yeah.
of was really challenging for me to ever see myself in this space. And when I got to my 30s, it was just ripping the band-aid off and going full-fledged and just putting my blinders onto that imposter syndrome that I had experienced. And fortunately, in my career as a probation officer, a lot of the same themes kind of go with coaching. So that's been really helpful too, is I think that helped kind of lay the foundation for some of those skills that I have now that I can work with clients with.
So as a coach, you have the opportunity to be that flashpoint in someone's life to change and to go down a better path. Who was that for you? Who was the coach, the teacher, the inspiration, the hero? Who was the one that helped you kind of rip that band-aid off and get to a better place in your 30s?
There's been a few, I would say a few different things that have been said to me, um, and people that have encouraged me. Like my husband's always been incredibly encouraging. He's always kind of seen what I haven't been able to see and had helped me kind of put that mirror in front of myself to see that I can do these things that I want to do. I also think about just some of the things that have been said to me throughout the years. I remember like we all had that one teacher in high school that really showed up for us and really made us feel seen. And when I think about what I do now as a coach, that's those same qualities and traits are the same thing I want to apply to my clients. Making sure that they feel seen and heard and that their feelings are valued and we can kind of work through um, what ultimately is impacting their ability to make that change. So I don't know if I had one one big person in my
Yeah.
life. Like I said, I think my husband was really that person who was like, what are you talking about? Like you can do this, and really help push me kind of out of my comfort zone.
So if you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now that you find inspirational, that might help you on your journey and your coaching and your life in general, who would you love to meet and talk to?
The owner of Girls Gone Strong, I think, is really an inspirational person. Molly, I'm going to probably say her last name on Galbraith, I think.
Yeah.
Um, Her whole philosophy and what she's built her business to is something that I hold dear to myself. And she really treats women's health and fitness from the same approach that I do, which is non-restrictive and more holistic than maybe what women are used to hearing. So she's one I would love to pick her brain on just a number of topics. She's built a really great business, but also has done, I think, a lot of great things for women.
So what gets you up every day to do this work? Because obviously, in the realm of coaching, you have to kind of hop into people's worlds and it can get messy. How do you protect yourself? What motivates you every day? But you also have a soul you have to take care of and nurture. What
Mhm.
is that for you every day?
I think what motivates me is, when I reflect back on kind of where this journey has brought me to, and just to give a little bit of background, for all of my 20s, more than my 20s, probably till I was about 34, 33, I had been really over restricting my food and kind of looking for external validation constantly in my body and how I showed up for the world. And once I made the shift and learned that I didn't have to be so hard on myself and didn't have to use such use restriction to get to those goals that I wanted to, it really became the driving force and my passion for helping others see that because we're taught that we should be restricting our favorite foods or um, we should be doing this certain workout or these certain things. And the reality is that's not true. So when I think about my passion and getting up and doing this every day, it's spreading that message. Ultimately, it's just spreading the message that like it doesn't have to be this hard. I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing is we're we think it's so complicated and it's not. So that's my biggest like driver is just making sure that women know that it doesn't have to be this hard.
So, as far as coaching and clients, what was the first client? What was the moment that you knew this was your calling, that you needed to be a coach and you were making a positive impact? Was there a moment like that? Was there a client? How did that work?
Um, I think of a couple things. First, before I started coaching and with my business, I had signed up to be a coaching client. So I was a nutrition coaching client for another business who kind of emulated similar values to my own. And I remember going through that process, and that was really like, I want to do this. Like this is transformative, even for me when I'm in a space where I've kind of already made some positive changes, but it was still very helpful. So having that own experience for myself. But then as I started to coach clients, sometimes people just need a little bit of permission to make some changes. And I think about one in particular who was really struggling with restriction and kind of ultimately what it would lead to would she be around maybe foods that she was restricting and she just really kind of go crazy with them and end up feeling really unwell and ultimately setting herself back, setting herself with her goals back. And I remember her sharing that that wasn't happening anymore. And that was such a big win. And I think about that first moment I talked to her where it was it was like just simply giving that permission of like, well, you can eat this. We'll just figure out how to make it fit. Um, and that was such a joy to see because that was again one of kind of those mission moments for me that I really wanted to help people understand that they can include all foods.
So if you were to have a dream tonight and run into that younger version of you in your 20s with the limiting beliefs, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated up to this point, what advice would you impart on that young version of you?
Do the scary thing. Always do the scary thing. I think about um, how growth works. And if we're constantly doing things that we're comfortable with and we're in our little bubble, we'll never grow. And if it scares you and it excites you at the same time, go for it.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
what I would say. Hmm.
So this is the perfect lead into my next question. Let's say you walked into a room of everybody that's known you professionally, whether it's with your day job or as a coach, and you could swim through that group of people and go to a podium and tell them one fun story about you. Maybe the first concert you went to, a magical
Hmm.
place you traveled to, jumping out of an airplane, some hobby they may not know about. What would be
Hmm.
something fun you could tell that room of people?
Um, I probably would share, I probably would share the story about when I ran my first marathon. It makes me laugh just thinking about it because it was both rewarding and awful at the same time.
Uh-huh.
It was a 100-degree day in Iowa, very
Ooh,
humid,
ooh.
and I did about every possible thing wrong that you could think to do on a marathon. But in addition to that, like I cried 8 times, and it was, my yeah, it was a very, very challenging experience. And I laugh about it now, but at the time I was like, I'm never doing this again. But even with that, I'm like, it can only go up, right? So I'll
Yeah.
probably do it again at some point. But um, yeah, that was a good one. The training was fun. I did some things wrong, but yeah, that was a interesting race to say the least.
I'll interview some of these like people that are 50 plus that do super marathons, and it's like, wait, wait, wait. Like they just literally hit this epiphany in their lives and decided to get healthy. And it's not just like 26 miles is enough. They're like upping it. But I remember in high school, I was a cross country runner. I was 4'11" in high school. I wanted to play baseball and do other sports, but I just didn't have the size, so I ran.
Hmm.
And I understand that endorphin rush. I understand that pushing and
Hmm.
all of that, how it works. I've never done a marathon, but there was a kid in high school that did it, and he was like a sophomore or junior, and we were like, "You're nuts, dude! Like, what are you doing?" Because we
Hmm.
were only doing like, I don't know, what were they, 3.5 miles in high school, and we'd run a lot. But I
Wow.
guess he did it. He completed it. And the next morning he went to the bathroom and he could not stand up. He got stuck on the toilet. He had to call someone in the bathroom. Like he literally couldn't stand. Like his legs gave out. And I've
Wow.
heard stories where people just like the next day their body just goes into entropy, just
Yes.
shock.
Well, there was a gentleman too, because we had to ride a bus to get to the starting point, and they picked us up from the finish. There was a gentleman on the bus that when we were kind of debriefing afterwards, and he was sharing how he does ultra marathons and he thinks they're easier than marathons. And I'm like, I think you're trying to plant a seed in my head that I don't
Uh-huh.
necessarily want to grow.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think that sounds fun, but
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Of everything that you've done in your life and clearly overcome and evolved to, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
I think continuing this journey of building my business. I think it's a culmination of overcoming a lot of limiting beliefs. And there was a quote that I'd heard a long time ago about with building a business, it grows as much as you're willing to be vulnerable. And so that's kind of the philosophy I've taken with it and just continuing to put myself in positions where I'm not super comfortable and knowing I'll be okay. That's, I think, what I'm continuing to be proud of. Yeah.
So whenever you have a dream and you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to start your own business, you have this ideological notion of what it's going to be like. This anything, whether you get married or you buy a house or you have kids or you get an animal, you have this idea of what you think is going to happen to a certain degree. What's the difference between the dream you had of this business and what it's actually become? What's that area in between the dream and reality?
I think there have been things that have been more challenging than I thought, and things that have come a little bit easier than I thought. Um, and also, one thing I learned pretty early on, because it was 2023 when I started, and I think when I first started, I had a lot of expectations and wasn't meeting kind of these arbitrary expectations I set. So one thing I've learned is just drop the expectations, again, kind of do the scary things and just keep chipping away at it. And hopefully, as you continue to grow, you'll kind of receive that feedback in your business. But that's one thing, in the health and fitness space, we tend to set arbitrary expectations too, and set timelines for ourselves. Like, I want to lose X pounds by X day, when the reality is why? Like, what's the real reason? And I think about that with my business too, of setting kind of these arbitrary expectations just to kind of set myself up to fail or like make myself feel bad. So I try to let go of some of that stuff and just go with the flow and, roll with the punches, as they say.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, but you're in control. You run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm just figuring it out like everybody else.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think, I've had some folks share with me that, like, my husband gets the comments like, "Oh, you're so lucky that your wife is extroverted," and I'm like, "Me?" Um, so I think about that. Like, I'm very much an introvert, but what I've learned is that if it's something I'm passionate about, that's when my extrovert comes out. So and with the coaching space, I think some people think like I have it all together, and that's really not the case too. I think we're all just kind of on this continuous path to grow,
Yeah.
and I am, as well as everybody else.
So the urge to change or the urge to hire a coach requires a, a certain amount of risk to get to
Mhm.
that point. What would you say to anybody out there that's on the fence that might feel like they need something else in their lives, a different direction, and to reach out, hire you, ask questions? What would you say to urge them to do that?
I think just taking that first step and taking the first step and reaching out already says that you're in a stage of change where you want to do something different. With my coaching, I offer just a 45-minute coaching call that is completely free. That's just so we can get to know each other. I'm very firm in my belief that if I can't help you, I want to make sure I communicate that to you. So it's best that I get to know you and we kind of have a dialogue about what's going to work for you, what your goals are, and moving forward. So ultimately, if you're in a position where you kind of have that question mark, I think it's just reaching out and taking that first step, and getting to know me and seeing if I can help you.
Okay, Allison, this is a perfect lead in if anybody wants to do that. They want to hire you, they want to ask questions, they want to consult. Where do they go? What's the best way to do it to reach out?
Yeah, so you can visit my website. It's www.allysoncoaches.com. There's a link to schedule a free consultation on there. And again, that's a 45-minute call. If that's something you're not comfortable with, I've done video calls, phone calls, even just messaging back and forth. And you can also find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Allyson Coaches.
Okay, I will put all those links in the show notes. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.